Okay, we've got a bit out of order because I recorded a video where halfway through I ran out of space on the camera, and so it stopped automatically recording, and I had to go in and delete some videos, and so I selected the oldest one and said delete, and it said, are you sure you want to delete all scenes on August the 18th of 2016? Yeah, sure. And that deleted everything on the camera, including what I just recorded. At which point I didn't really want to do the rest of the video. But I took it in surprisingly good humour. I've just got so used to my work being destroyed and corrupted and discarded by hardware and software now that I just kind of laughed. It's just like, oh yeah, of course I just lost everything. So, I'll just summarise, because I've, what happened since not last video, I don't know. What has happened recently is that I have very slowly and very carefully, and with a lot of crashes but a lot of fixing, done the system whereby I can generate a chunk of ship and make it all one segment, and then generate another chunk of ship, make that all one segment, and therefore I can write algorithms for generating ship shapes that also divide it well into rectangular segments, and that was the big goal. And I did that for Sovereign, and it does them in a kind of diagonal sequence of squares that are then linked by little rectangular segments, so that there's always a route, and that nicely matches the ship shape that I was going for, that the previous algorithm generated, and it also divides it really well into rectangular segments. There's lots of barriers between them, and lots of ones you have to progress through, and lots of options as to which way you go. And then the next thing I did was, well, now that I've got that system working, that's exactly what I needed to do glitches the way I really wanted to do them, which is these chunks of ship connected by little corridors, just little squares connected by corridors, in a, not like in one long chain or anything, but like in almost like a grid, and I've done exactly that. And they are currently always connected to each other, like every one is connected to all its neighbours, and they're in a grid, but it doesn't really look too much like a grid because their size can vary a lot. Or like the size of everything can vary in every way. So this module, not only does it not have to be 3 by 3, it doesn't have to be at that location, it can be slightly lower down. Not only does it not have to be that size, it doesn't have to be that aspect ratio either, it can be squished that way, it can be squished that way. And that's true of all of the blobs, and then the shape they end up being affects kind of how the connections between them look, because the connection has to be longer if they're further away. And that is working really nicely. On the outside, it's also working well game logic-wise on the inside. The only issue with it at the moment is it's very visually noisy on the inside, because it's tending to generate just a lot of individual rooms, which is not the best look. Ships tend to look good when there's a lot of corridors, because corridors are really clear where things connect to other things. It doesn't look like a grid, it looks like a snaking shapes. And big rooms, because they're big and you can see them easily. So I wanted to encourage it to do more of that, and it kind of ties into another thing I want to improve about the interior generation, where it just generates a lot of loop modules. It just generates it will do 6 in a row, which is a nice little treat for you as a player, but it's a bit too much. That is done. The last thing to do on glitches is that the new algorithm, because it makes these random size things, it actually doesn't always fill the grid. The grid has a thing called last row, which is supposed to be the front of the ship, and actually the front of the ship doesn't always reach all the way to that. And so I would either need to ensure the algorithm ends exactly on the last row, or just after I've generated it, check what the last row really is and set that variable to that, because I think it's only that variable. No, actually I think there's one called length in modules that I'd also have to change. But I can't think of a reason I can't do that. Anyway, I'll probably just do that the cheap and easy way and see if it crashes. Then that's sort of it, except that I went back and checked Offworld ships, because I changed something about the way airlocks spawn and I wanted to check it works for each faction. And what I found with Offworld is that, yeah, it does work fine, but there are quite a lot of Offworld ship shapes that completely destroy the segment system. I don't know what's going on, but they just it just gets split into loads of tiny segments, and that's not good. And Offworld was done before I'd figured out this new segment and ship shape thing. That was the faction where I tried that, and it went so badly wrong that I abandoned it and went back to a cheap way. So I think I've got to redo them with the new system, because it's going to make way more sense. and that'll be the third time I've done the Offworld ship generation algorithm, but I think that's got to be, it would be nice to have them in line with each other anyway. I could even redo Foundry someday, but right now Foundry are fine, so I'm going to leave them as is. So yeah, that should be the only two things, and once those are done, that is, I won't make any claims about the game state, about how ready it is to play, but, you know, for testing. But I will say that it's a big milestone. It's a time when I will take a bit of a break at least. And then what happens after that is really just going to be a case of me coming back to it, playing it and seeing what the biggest problem is. Certainly performance is a big problem and I need to work on that, but I'm sort of planning to maybe get someone to help me with that. I think that's an area I don't like doing, I'm not very good at it, and it's one where it really benefits from like a proper programmer education and some years of experience that I don't have. And also bug fixing and performance and those kind of technical aspects to finishing a game are my least favourite bits, and I'm very bad at them, and so getting someone to help with that would be great. So I haven't quite totally finalised my plan for that yet, but that is something I'm not going to worry about doing myself. I can see there's performance problems and I'm not thinking, oh shit, I better fix those tomorrow. That would be foolhardy. So that is probably the biggest thing left to do, or the biggest problem. But I want to play it and see if there are like structural problems, because I've generated the ships now, and now, you know, it's one thing to test a ship and make sure it works, but then it's another thing to play the game and have that be the final ship that you're going to board when you complete your personal goal, and work towards it over like 20 missions, and then get to it, and then if there's a problem with it, then you're really pissed off. So I need to make sure it works well enough for that. And then, yeah, I think there's a couple of things need fixing about the inventory screen. I'm calling it the what now screen now, because it's kind of a pause menu, and I want to smooth out a lot of things about that. And trying to think what else might need doing. I mean, loads of little things need doing, loads of fixes that have been long in the works. Loads of things about the way it looks and the way it feels to play need improving. I'm delaying those. I'm maybe going to delay those until performance is fixed, because the game doesn't feel good when it doesn't run well, and sometimes it runs well, sometimes it doesn't. But things like grenades have no effects. Like, you throw a grenade, nothing visually happens, just the enemies go flying, but there's no explosion at all. It also makes no sound for the guards. I think it does make a sound for you, I think you hear it, but that's it. So that's one of those things where it just needs something in there. Like, it doesn't have to be final, it just needs some kind of effect. And I guess like frazzlers and jackers need something like that. And yeah, it really feels like at that point it will be a case of, you know, tweaking what needs fixing rather than going through my giant to-do list and fixing things in order, because, you know, my to-do list has until now been a list of things that absolutely have to be done. Whereas now it's going to be more a case of reactive and yeah, tweaking what needs tweaking.